In this video, I will demonstrate how to create a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet with Process Runner add-in. Process Runner add-in enables a user to upload and download data directly to and from SAP without being required to navigate SAP views. I'm going to exit out of this Excel spreadsheet, and we will now recreate the spreadsheet in Process Runner. Here you can see I have the process file for the transaction code MM02. This is the process file for the Excel spreadsheet, which I'm going to convert into an external Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to point out a few things first before I do that. First, we'll go to the iBook tab. Here you can see I have the data. This is an internal instance of Excel, which is in Process Runner. If I'm going to click on this button, you can see that I have the normal Excel menu options. If I go to the Mapper tab, you can see here that I have the data properly mapped. My material number is going to come from column A. My corrected gross weight is coming from column B. My corrected net weight is coming from column C. Now if I go to the Home tab, I just want to point out a few things here. See that I have the start row at 2, the end row at 11. If I go to Message Settings and then go to the Hyperlink tab, you can see here that I have created a hyperlink for the transaction code MM03. I'm going to explain later in the video why this is utilized and how it is utilized. But I also just want to point out to you that if you had other transaction codes that you were creating the process file, we do have other hyperlinks for these various transaction codes. And if you needed to, you could create your own hyperlink with your own parameter command by using VB.NET scripting and typing that parameter command in this box. Go ahead now and click OK. So I'm ready now to export my iBook as an external Excel spreadsheet with Process Runner Excel add-in. So in order to do that, I go to this picture of an Excel spreadsheet with the drop-down. You can see here that I have the option Save as Excel Add-in Ready File, which I could select. Or if I go over to the File tab, I can scroll down to Save as Excel Add-in Ready File and double-click here. Go ahead and do that from here. Now I have the pop-up Generate Excel Add-in Ready File. So I'm just going to explain now some of the things on this pop-up. Notice that it says don't include iBook. That is the default setting. It's not necessary for me to include the iBook because once I hit this Generate button, it will create an external Excel file which will have all of the data contained in the iBook. So it's not necessary to include the iBook. Now if I wanted to embed an additional process file into the Excel spreadsheet, which will be created, notice that I have here this MM02 process file that will embed. If I wanted to embed an additional process file, I just click on this button here. And from here, from this folder where I have my process files, I can select an additional process file. I'm going to choose Mara, a data extraction file. So now I have 2 process files that will be embedded in this Excel spreadsheet. Go ahead and click on Generate. I just get this pop-up that the Excel window may flicker during template generation. Now I'm prompted for where I want to save the external Excel spreadsheet to. I'm going to pick my desktop just to make it simple. There's the flickering. Now the pop-up comes up, the Process Runner Excel Add-in Ready File Creation. You can see here that it says the Excel file is ready to be used with Process Runner Excel Add-in. Open this file in Excel and go to Process Runner Add-ins tab in Excel to process this file. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now that Excel file has been generated, so I can exit out of Process Runner. And I go over here. I'm just going to pull down this Excel file to the center of my screen. Click on here. You can see here it looks like a typical Excel spreadsheet, except for the Process Runner tab located at the top. I'm going to click on that, and now my menu options become available to me. So I'll just go ahead now and explain some of the different features of the menu. If I needed to open an additional Excel file with Process Runner add-in, I just go to Open. That will enable me to open up any new files that I may have saved or from the cloud. If I go to Add, from here I can add an additional process file to this Excel spreadsheet. So right now I have the two process files which I embedded utilizing Process Runner, but now I can actually add them directly from here. I click on the Add, I'm in my Documents folder, I'm going to select Innowera, and I have my process files saved in this Process Files folder. Now I'm going to add the transaction code or the process file, MM01. Process file attached successfully. You can see here now from the drop-down that I do have the three process files now attached to this Excel spreadsheet. Now I'm going to explain some of the run features of Process Runner Excel add-in. But before I run the data, I'm actually going to deliberately make a few errors so I can point out some of our test run capabilities. So now as a user, I'm going to first test run the data before I run it. So I go to this test button, push this, and now I'm prompted to log into an SAP system. So I could run this in a test environment or a production environment. When I run it in test run, the data will not be saved to SAP, but if you want to be on the safe side, you can do it in a test run system first and then do the run in a normal production environment. Go ahead now and click the Logon. I'll put in the password for my SAP user. Here is the test run. You can see here that it's returned the error message that would appear for me if I was to run the data in SAP. It says the material 100-120X does not exist. The material 100-300X does not exist. So now all I need to simply do is make the correction in the data. And I go ahead and do a normal run of the data. Again, if I needed to, I could change my SAP system from the test environment to the production environment, or just stick with whatever environment I was originally in. Go with the Logon. You can see here that each of these materials has been changed. I've done a successful run of this data into SAP. Now, as a user, I could verify that because in the beginning of creating the process file, I did add a hyperlink. Now I will explain how that hyperlink works here with the Process Runner Excel add-in. You can see here that these cells have the hyperlink formula. So I can just pick whatever material I want, and then I push the Show in SAP GUI button. And from here, I'm prompted to put in my Logon credentials. And now I have the SAP GUI view that comes up. I'm going to select basic data because I know this is the view where the change is going to show. Just going to minimize this, and you can see here that I have the material 100-200. And the corrected gross weight of 97 and 83 has been made. If I go to environment here and show the display changes, you can see that that SAP user made the change utilizing the transaction code MM02 of this data on this particular date. Now I'm just going to exit out of this SAP GUI. And I'll show you other run capabilities of Process Runner now. I go ahead and remove these columns of messages just to clean up the Excel spreadsheet here. Going to make a change in the gross weight and the net weight. And now I'm going to, again, make errors in the data deliberately. Now I'll do a normal run without performing a test run. So again, I have the error messages for the 2 rows where I added the X. So what I'll do now is I'm going to make the changes in these 2 rows. And now I'm going to do what's called the error processing run. And you can see here that the status column where the errors are stored is column D. And so now with the error processing run, only those rows in column D that have error messages will be processed. As you can see here, the changes were made and Process Runner only processed the rows that had error messages. So this is a valuable feature if you've run thousands of lines of data and you just have a few errors and you don't want to rerun all of the lines of data. By utilizing error processing run, you're only running the transactions that had the error messages, saving yourself some time. That was the error processing run. Now I'm going to show you this debug feature. So again, I'm going to delete these columns of messages and just clean up the spreadsheet a bit. And we'll change the gross weight and the net weight again. And this time, I'm just going to make one error. And now I'm going to run this data. So you can see here that I have this pop-up, 1 or more error encountered. Do you want to step-by-step debug the error in SAP GUI? So I could click yes here. And this is related to this error message. The material 100-120X does not exist. But I'm going to click no just so that I can show you that we actually can do the same thing by clicking this debug button up here. So I'm going to click it here. And I get the pop-up. Asks me to choose the start the debug row and the end the debug row. And so I know that this is row 5. So I'm going to go ahead and select row 5 to end it as well. And then I can step through all the screens, or I can go directly to the error screen. And just to show you what this is going to like, I'm going to keep it at the default, stepping through all the error screens. Now this asks me if I want to continue debug after each transaction. If I had kept this at ending row 11, after I went through the screens for row 5, I would then be prompted if I wanted to go through row 6, 7, etc. I'm just going to unselect this and I'm going to click OK. And I'm prompted to log into SAP. That's because I'm going to actually be entering into SAP. I'll be making the changes in the GUI screens. Let's bring this up so you can see here. I have my, let's go ahead and hide that. I have my first screen where I have the material number with the X, so I need to make the change in that. So I'm just going to remove that X, and then I'll select the OK. Now I have the basic data view. I'm going to hit the enter for that. And now I can make the changes in the gross weight and the net weight, which I had put in the 56 and the 45. So I just click OK there. And then do you want to save your data for this material? Yes. And now we're going to see here that the material has been changed. So that's what you can do with the debug run. It takes you through screen by screen in the SAP GUI. Now for an end user, this may help with some error management, but really it's a lot easier, I think, just to make the correction in the column. But for those that are utilizing Process Runner and are actually creating the original template for this Excel spreadsheet, that debug capability is also in Process Runner, and that makes it easier to determine where you made an error in your recording process when you're recording the GUI screens to set up the Process Runner file. All right, now that I've showed you the different run capabilities in Process Runner Excel add-in, I'm just going to explain some more of our menu here. So we have the start row to obviously the end row. I have 11, but I could change that to 15 or 16 or 1,000, 15,000, however many rows of data that I had. And here we have the process files, which I've showed you previously. Now if we go to settings and click the settings at the top, we can see here that I can adjust the auto status, and this is where the messages show up. So right now I am on auto status, so after the columns D and E get filled, it moves to F and G, and then it would continue to H and I. But I could actually change this if I wanted to and make the messages start in column Z, column AA, wherever I wanted the messages to appear. So this might be convenient for an Excel spreadsheet maybe that has certain information that is not directly related to the SAP transaction. You could have something like a picture or an icon, and you don't want the messages being written over whatever is in that Excel spreadsheet. So if you did want to select a particular column, that's how you would do that, to write the messages to. Now, if you wanted to have different messages display, you can select from this drop down where it says Display All. Then you can check and uncheck which SAP messages you would like to appear in the Excel spreadsheet. Normally, we just leave the default setting to display only the last. Here we have a Logon shortcut. Now, if the original designer of this Process Runner Excel add-in file had created a Logon shortcut, then I click on Logon shortcut, and at the drop down there would appear the shortcut that had been created in Process Runner. And then if I click OK, this will enable me to do runs without having to enter my SAP logon and password credentials. So that could speed up the process, but for those designers that are concerned about users running it without putting in their logons, then they would want to not create the logon shortcut in the original process file in Process Runner. So again, this drop down is only going to be populated if the shortcuts had originally been created in Process Runner, which I had previously done for this process file. I just didn't show it in the video earlier. Now, if you would like to set up parallel processing threads, you can have up to 3. If you need more than that, you can contact Innowera and we can raise your level of parallel processing threads. I'm going to skip over the Advanced tab just for the sake of time. If we go to My Notes, you can add a note here to the process file. You might want to give some type of instruction or perhaps a word of encouragement to your coworker, and that can be when they open the file or when they run the file. And the file properties just shows the general properties about the file, such as when it was created, when it was changed. Now we're going to move on from the settings to the mapper. And under mapper, this shows the original SAP field names as well as the field description. So sometimes a user may get an error message and it may name the particular column or it may name the particular field where the error message is at, but the user who's not familiar with SAP field names may not recognize that field name in the error. And so if they clicked on Mapper, they could see the field name and what the field description is. And then by going to the field description, having determined what the field name is, they could then make the correction in their error. Now moving over to process files. This allows you to manipulate the process files that are embedded in the Excel spreadsheet. You'll recognize this folder button from Process Runner. I could click on here and embed an additional process file into the Excel spreadsheet, just the way I did in Process Runner. If I want to adjust the order of these process files, I have these arrows here. I'm sorry. I have the arrows that enable me to maneuver these basic process files. And you can see that changes the order that these are displayed up here. So I could put my more important process files at the top and the least used process files at the bottom. Also, if I wanted to save a particular process file to my hard drive or my network, I select the process file, I click extract, and then I'll be taken into my different folders, and I can choose and I can save it to the location of my choice. If I wanted to remove the process file completely, I just highlight it and then click remove. And then that process file will no longer be embedded in the Excel worksheet. So you can see here that Mara Data Table Extraction process file is now gone. If I want to make an adjustment on the settings of a particular process file, I highlight it, click Settings. From here I can change the display name. So maybe MM02. I would like to make that more meaningful to the user of the Excel spreadsheet. I can change the display name. You can see here I've changed the MM02 to change material. You'll notice though that the file name actually doesn't change, so it's just the display name. Now if I wanted to unlock these process files, this would enable each of these process files to appear in the other sheets, in the other worksheets in Excel. So I'm just going to go ahead and change the settings on these and unlock these. And we'll close this, and then I'm going to create a sheet 2. And you can see here that I now have these process files available on sheet 2. And however many sheets that I wanted to create, they would still be available. If I went back to the process files and back to the settings, I could lock this to one worksheet, and then my other process file I could lock to another worksheet. Then you can see here on sheet 1, only this process file is available, and on sheet 2, only this process file is available. So that can be manipulated in whatever way the designer or the user feels is necessary. Now, if you utilized the locking capabilities from Process Runner, you could actually prevent the user from being able to change the settings from the Excel spreadsheet. So just because I am showing you this doesn't mean that all users would have this capability if the designer chose to lock the particular process files to particular worksheets while they were in Process Runner. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to change this one back to the MM02. And I'll make that just available to all the worksheets. And we'll go ahead and remove the MM01. I'd really only attached that for the purpose of this demo, and it really wasn't critical to the data. Next item that I'll show you is our tools. I've already shown you the Show in SAP GUI. Just go back to our sheet 1 here. So with the tools, there is an options, and this has several different settings for manipulating data and views. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over this options, but just to make you aware that it is there. And now we'll go to the show last run status. This run status had been popping up at various times when I'd run the transactions, and since the data was being processed in just a few seconds, I just moved it off to the side and hadn't really gone over it. But this does show you the start time, the end time of the run, and it shows you how much time was spent in SAP running the transaction. And that last one took 50 seconds. If you'll remember, that was the SAP GUI screens where I was slowly going through the screens making the change. But those other runs had taken place in as little as 1 to 2 seconds. The next tool that we have is the show log. This is just a log of different events in your process runner timeline. You can see here there's things like license loaded, the validation of the license, when the process runner session started, ended, etc., etc. We also have here the show stats, or show stat. The show statistics shows you the time that process runner was utilized, specifically transaction by transaction or process by process. These are different process files. Shows you the day that they were run at, their start, end times, and their duration. And that's pretty much it, just for a basic overview of the tools. And then finally, we have our help button. Clicking on this is going to take you to a web page where you have help specific to Process Runner Excel add-in. And there are different topics and different things. You can do a search. You can do a search by a specific topic. Then you also have a table of contents for different areas that you may need help with Process Runner Excel add-in. Well, that's it for the Process Runner Excel add-in help video. Please visit Innowera.com to learn more about the exciting products that Innowera offers to automate your data management in SAP.